please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and good morning. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. I am Anisha Jain and with me is Nigel Dsouza. Well, Nigel, good morning. Day before yesterday, we saw that swift recovery coming in the market in the last hour of trade, and yesterday was the opposite because in the second half of trade we saw a dip, but fair to say that the bullish trend continues.
Absolutely, Anisha. Very good morning first to you. After 8 trading sessions, we ended in the red, so that was quite important as well. We look quite good on the Asian markets. Following a surge in the US equities, they have shrugged off the North Korean missile tests, and that explains why, in fact, the Nikkei is sitting with a gain of close to around 0.5%. Remember, the dollar as well maintained gains as US tax cuts inch close to reality. So that's fairly important. We have the Nikkei that's trading higher, the Kospi as well. In spite of that, you know, the missile test that we're talking about, that as well is holding more or less flattish. And the Straits, that's the other market that opened up. That as well was trading with a gain of around 0.2%. So fair to say that you know, the Asian markets have opened up with good green. They've ignored what North Korea is doing now. You know, we've been hearing about that for some time. And that would mean that the SGX Nifty is indicating we're likely to open up with a gain of close to around 30 points approximately. If that happens, then we'll be brushing aside all of yesterday's losses.
Okay, talking more about that missile launch then. In the latest provocation, North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile early today. The missile traveled about 1,000 kilometers before crashing into the Sea of Japan. The Department of Defense said that initial assessments indicated that the missile was an intercontinental ballistic missile or ICBM. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe ordered an emergency meeting of cabinet ministers following the launch. The launch comes on the back of Trump's November 20th announcement that the US is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. Remember, Trump's reaction to the launch was more muted than in the past. He said, and I quote, "We will take care of it," unquote. He told reporters in Washington, "It is a situation that we will handle."
It is a situation that we will handle. We want our military funded, and we want it funded now. It's going to be bigger, better, stronger, it already is, than ever before, but we want to get going on that now.
We can never accept North Korea's continuous provocative behavior, and we are strongly protesting against it.
And on Wall Street, the stocks finished at record highs as the Senate took a step towards passing a bill aimed at reforming the U.S. tax code. The Dow soared 255 points at close. The S&P 500 as well jumped around 1% as financials climbed, while the Nasdaq gained 0.5% at close. CNBC's Hampton Pearson gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets seeing big gains today. The Dow adding 255 points, up better than 1%. The S&P up 25. The Nasdaq gaining 33 points. Consumers entering the holiday season in high spirits. The Consumer Confidence Index hitting a fresh 17-year high and blowing past economists' expectations in November. This is the 5th month in a row that the index has increased, reflecting households' upbeat perceptions of the labor market, which is nearing full employment. Thor Industries is on track for its best day in 5 years after reporting better than expected earnings late yesterday. Shares of the RV builder soaring over 13% today as demand for its towable and motorized vehicles rise. The stock is up around 52% for the year. A big merger in the restaurant world today, with Arby's announcing it'll acquire Buffalo Wild Wings for about $2.4 billion, excluding debt. This after the chicken wing chain rejected a previous bid by Arby's, which says it'll continue to operate Buffalo Wild Wings as an independent brand. That's the action from the U.S. markets. You have a good trading day in India. Back to you in Mumbai.
Sticking with the news from the U.S. then, Jerome Powell, nominated by President Trump to lead the Federal Reserve, appeared before the Senate Banking Committee and defended the Fed's approach to financial regulation. He also pledged to continue the Fed's current approach to monetary policy by gradually raising interest rates so as long as economic growth remains healthy. CNBC TV18's Steve Leesman reports on the highlights from Powell's confirmation hearing.
The more the Fed chairman nominee Jerome Powell spoke, it seemed the more the market liked what it heard. The S&P accelerated to the upside as the Fed governor, appointed by President Trump to replace Fed Chair Janet Yellen, spoke about his views on monetary policy and bank regulation. What did he say? Well, the first thing he did was dance around the minefield of the current tax bill before Congress. That's one area that could derail the confirmation. Here's what Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown asked him about the $1.5 trillion deficit cost of the tax cut.
Don't you have a responsibility in an ongoing sort of way to talk to us about the modeling that you've done, that what this will mean to the fiscal situation of our country in the years ahead?
I think our responsibility is to carry out the mandate that you've given us, which is to achieve stable prices and maximum employment, and also look after the financial stability.
But of course, we rely on you for data all the time.
Respectfully, Senator, I don't think you rely on us to score fiscal proposals. That's not really our role.
More importantly, Powell indicated he would continue the gradual policies of Fed Chair Janet Yellen, both in reducing the balance sheet and in raising rates. He even seemed dovish on the outlook for employment and the effect on inflation.
What we can do is we can push harder on maximum employment. I think we're doing that. I think we are looking at an economy that's going to go under 4% unemployment.
Powell said he wasn't certain why inflation was so low, but it allows the Fed to go slowly on raising rates, and he supported some easing of banking regulations, especially for smaller and mid-sized banks, causing bank stocks to rally. Steve Leisman, CNBC Business News.
Well, in the European markets, key indices ended the day higher following UK stress tests that revealed that no banks needed fresh capital. Focusing on the political developments then in Ireland, the Deputy Prime Minister resigned in order to avoid a potential collapse of the government and reduce the risk of snap elections. So we had the three frontliners ended in the green, though we have political instability play out in Ireland. Yet, in fact, we had that market that ended with some gains. And if you take a look at the peripheral indices, the Spanish index was up close to around 1%, and emerging markets as well, they were more or less flattish in trade yesterday. But across the Atlantic, the UK as well as the European Union negotiators have reached an outline deal on the divorce bill that Britain will pay when it leaves the bloc, clearing a hurdle in talks and leaving the thorny issue of the Irish border as the last major obstacle. Now, reports suggest that the Brexit divorce bill is likely to finally total around 50 billion euros. A deal on the bill would signal that London and Brussels are moving much closer to an agreement at a December 14-15 summit to advance to a new phase in the negotiations and discuss their post-Brexit trade relationship.
Okay, let's shift focus to the currency space then. The dollar index holds on to overnight gains after the Senate Budget Committee approved the Republican tax bill. Remember, boost also coming in from strong U.S. economic data as U.S. consumer confidence unexpectedly improved in November to a 17-year high.
In the world of commodities, and crude oil prices eased the way down by uncertainty over the outcome of OPEC meeting this week, which an extension to its price supporting oil output cuts will be discussed. Currently, Brent crude price is moving towards $63 per barrel.
And from the precious metal space, gold eases lower following a confirmation hearing for U.S. Federal Reserve Chair nominee Jerome Powell. The U.S. Federal Reserve is likely to raise interest rates again next month, Powell told the Senate Banking Committee.
Home on Dalal Street, the market snapped an 8-session winning streak. The Nifty closed below the 10,400 mark. The Sensex was down close to around 100 points. And the broader markets as well, by the time we wound up, they gave up all the opening gains that we saw. Naveen Shetty joins in early this morning to run us through all the market cues. Hi Naveen, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I'll begin with the global cues, which look strongly positive today. So if you see the Dow Jones, they ended at close to 250 points up. Why? Because the Senate has finally got closer to the tax reform bill. Also, the European indices, they have been closing almost 0.5% higher. So fairly positive cues. On the other hand, SGX Nifty, that indicates an opening closer to the 10,400 level. But the key point to note here is the closing. Will that be about 10,400? As you clearly pointed out yesterday, we saw late selling in trade, and that is the reason why we fell below the 10,400 mark and ended closer to the low point of the day. Also, the option series, that is indicating some bit of a pressure on the upside. So 10,400 call, that has added close to 10 lakh shares, and the premium is 30 rupees. So 10,430, that is where there will be a fair bit of a resistance. On the other hand, put writers, they have been covering the 10,400 put, and over there the 10,400 put has shed close to 10.5 lakh shares. So that means that and the premium over there is close to 50 rupees. So for bears to make money, the put that level has to be crossed, and 10,500 should be gone on the lower side. If that happens, 10,350 crosses on the downside. The next resistance is at 10,326, which is the 20-day moving average and also the recent closing low. So keep an eye on that number carefully. On the other hand, if you see the institutional activity yesterday, that has been fairly negative. Overall, the net institutional buy and sell figure is close to 415 crores in the cash market. Also, the most important trigger is the next expiry, that is today, that is slated for tomorrow. So basically, expiry indicates that there will be some volatility today as well as in tomorrow's trade. Back to you.
Okay, Naveen, thank you for giving us the market setup, but also tell us what are the stocks that we should keep an eye out on?
Fair bit of stocks in today's trade that will be quite important. So I'll begin with SpiceJet. Remember, yesterday post-market as they have notified that the company will be diversifying into the real estate arena. So remember, we'll have to check how the market will be taking this decision of the company. On the other hand, Just Dial, Sequoia Capital, they have sold a fair, almost 0.3% shares in the company. Jet Airways will also be in focus in today's trade. Another airlines company, remember, today is their meeting with KLM and Air France to decide on the joint venture. Meanwhile, Technofab Engineering, relatively smaller company, that they had bagged an order close to 280 crores. Remember, this brings their total order book close to 2,000 crore. Results have also still trickling in. So ADF Food, steady set of numbers. If you see, the revenue is down, but the margins over there, that have improved by close to 210 basis points at 13%. RPP Infra also came out with its numbers. Revenue growth was strong at 26%, but margins have plummeted by close to 300 basis points at 17%, purely because of the higher other expenses. Back to you.
The Entrepreneurship Summit has kicked off in Hyderabad. The city has been turned into a fortress for the mega congregation of policymakers and corporate leaders from India, US and many other countries. Prime Minister Modi and Ivanka Trump addressed the gathering. Ivanka hailed India's effort to empower women entrepreneurs, and the Prime Minister called on to the world to invest in India and become a partner for the growth story.
The theme, Women First, Prosperity for All, makes this edition of GS stand out. In Indian mythology, woman is an incarnation of Shakti, the goddess of power. We believe women empowerment is vital to our development.
This year's summit is focused on a theme that is key to our future: women first, prosperity for all. I'm proud to say that for the first time ever, women make up the majority of the 1,500 entrepreneurs selected to attend this summit. Only when women are empowered to thrive will our families, our economies, and our societies reach their fullest potential. One study estimates that closing the gender entrepreneurship gap worldwide could grow our global GDP by as much as 2%.
Well, the who's who of India Inc. gathered at the inaugural address at GES 2017, and we caught up with most of the CEOs after Prime Minister Modi and Ivanka Trump's address to them, to ask them really what was the significance of India hosting such a global scale event and what it really meant for India's investment climate and startup ecosystem. Let's hear out the top voices.
I think it sends a very strong message for all the entrepreneurs in the country, and some of us who are, I would say, older entrepreneurs are here to cheer the young entrepreneurs who are coming up.
Absolutely.
And to that extent, I think these events are very, very powerful and inspiring. And I'm very glad that the Prime Minister made a call to all the entrepreneurs, especially the women entrepreneurs, and Ivanka Trump did the same. So I would say it's a good endorsement for India's entrepreneurial ecosystem.
I think the fact that it's being hosted in India just recognizes the fact that Indian entrepreneurship is really amongst the best, if not the best in the world. I think it will raise issues that are very pertinent for entrepreneurship today in India, not just in India, but also all over the world. And I think the fact that the focus is on women entrepreneurs is so pertinent to India, because you have more and more women who are taken to the workforce, either through employment or through self-employment.
I think India is beginning to come of age on the global stage. A lot of Indians are showing what they can do. We have so many CEOs of large American companies who are Indians. This is a recognition of the world for India's talent, India's entrepreneurship, and the policies of our Prime Minister. For many years, this country has been throttled, regulated, over-regulated, and there's hardly been opportunity for young people.
India is a land of entrepreneurs. As you know, some of the states of our countries are doing great in the business development. And when we are looking up the second generations or the young generations, and when we are also talking about the women empowerment area, in that context, I think young entrepreneurships will get the great opportunity, great motivations by these such events, which is led by the US government. It get a great opportunity for the global access of the technology, innovations, and creativity, and the business development.
Resolution and deposit insurance bill, currently being studied by a parliamentary committee, is generating fear among depositors that the deposits with banks, both public and private, are not safe, except to the extent that they are insured. Lata joins in early this morning. Hi Lata, good morning. Could you explain this to us?
Well, actually, this has become a WhatsApp panic, and that's why I thought I'll handle it. Otherwise, there is no immediate peg to handle this. This bill was sent to a parliamentary committee, I think August or September, and that parliamentary committee is due to submit its report on the bill in the upcoming winter session. It could be taken up in the winter session, or it could be postponed to the next session. But that's when we will know the exact contents of the bill and what the parliamentary committee makes of it. What this bill does is it sets up a resolution corporation. At the moment, we have a deposit insurance corporation. All our deposits with banks are insured up to 1 lakh. And that insurance money is paid by the banks to this deposit corporation, which creates a kitty. And if a bank fails, that money is supposed to be used for giving it back to depositors. Until now, that's not the way it works. The Reserve Bank, when it sees a bank failing, just merges it with a stronger bank. Like, Global Trust Bank was merged into Oriental Bank of Commerce. Sangli Bank was merged into, I think, ICICI. United Western was merged into IDBI. Bank of Rajasthan was merged into ICICI. So that's how they've been managing so far. But now they're trying to make it cleaner. This resolution corporation is supposed to collect these deposits from banks and financial institutions. And if a bank or a financial institution fails, it will give this money up to the deposits insured. The remaining deposits could be used. All the subordinated debt also loses value because the bank is failing. And that money will be taken and given as capital to the banks so that the bank can carry on business. So depositors can lose a part of their deposits. Right now, what happens, the government is capitalizing. But in case a bank fails, you can use part of the deposits as well to capitalize the bank, carry on business. When the bank makes money, your deposits will be reimbursed. Now, this is creating panic. Can our deposits be taken away by the Resolution Corporation in case of a failure? Now, technically, if you read the bill, all uninsured deposits plus subordinated debt, all this can be, only the insured deposit and secured debt will have to be paid out by the bank, come what may. I asked a lot of former RBI chiefs, and their point is that, what you call this bail-inable debt. This is bail-in. I can take your debt. Bail-inable debt is only referring to subordinated bonds all over the world. Usually, it does not include deposits insured or uninsured, unless the sovereign himself is bankrupt. Otherwise, the sovereign, the taxpayer normally pays. And the biggest example really is the United Kingdom, when Northern Rock found a run on its accounts. Northern Rock was a private sector bank, but the British government's taxpayer paid up the deposits. So, you know, this is still there in the bill, and it's creating widespread WhatsApp forwarded panic. So I thought I'll just address it.
Okay, Lata, thank you for putting that into perspective. But time now to slip into a short break. Coming up ahead, CNBC TV18's election caravan